Hey everyone, it's Clever Zodiambo here, and today's video will be something of an accompaniment to the previous video. Last time out I showed you my process of creating a wall painting, and it was the first time I had shown on this channel something other than a canvas painting. And so today I'll talk about all the wall paintings that I had done prior to that one, and also mention the differences between them and also between wall painting in general and canvas painting, which is what I do more than anything. The video before this one is called The Runners, and if you'd like to watch it first, there's a link in the description. In any case, I'm going to talk about now the first wall painting I ever did. This was back in 2015, and it actually ended up being someone else's wall painting because I messed up so bad that someone had to come and rescue me. In other words, finish the painting for me. So this is only to show you that I didn't get off to a great start. And this is because before 2015, all the big paintings are done in oils, and I was painting directly on a primed canvas without an acrylic underpainting or an acrylic background as I paint today. And so when I was commissioned to create this wall painting that doesn't exist now, I had no experience either painting on walls or working with acrylics. And so I took up the challenge. But of course, when I arrived at the site, I realized not only had I bought the wrong materials, I had bought the kind of wall paints that are oil-based. In other words, they're turpentine or kerosene soluble and not water soluble. And so this made it so difficult for me to paint on this wall, which I didn't even prime or prepare before I started painting on it. I just dove right into it and later realized I couldn't blend the colors on the wall as I thought I was going to be able to. And the place was stinking with turpentine, and paint was spilling and dripping over parts of the wall that should have stayed clean. And to make it worse, I'd already been paid for the job, and I had spent a lot of the money buying materials. And not only were they the wrong materials, I actually bought way more materials than would have been necessary even if they were the right ones. So I had to abandon this job midway and call a friend who took over the painting and did all the mess I had done and thankfully painted what the client wanted. And so my first wall painting ended up being someone else's wall painting. But after this, all the other wall paintings that were to follow ended up going much smoother. The next wall painting came in 2018, so this was 3 years after the first failed attempt. And by this time, I had started incorporating acrylic paints into my process. And so I had a much better understanding of how this kind of paint works and how to mix it and how to blend it, when to use it, when not to use it. And I'd also done many more large-scale paintings. And so this next job was a vector painting of a lion that was to be done in an office block. I had done so many paintings between 2015 and 2018 that I literally had no issues working on this painting, and definitely nothing close to what had happened 3 years before. And so this lion painting and a painting of a mountain that was also in the same building ended up being my first actual wall paintings or my first murals that I ever did. So thankfully this time things worked out, and I was able to go back to my studio and create my canvas paintings, knowing at least I've proven to myself that I could also do wall paintings if I wanted. The job that followed that one came in 2021, and this time it was more of a realistic painting, or what in design can be called a raster painting, as opposed to the vector painting I'd done before of the face of the lion and the mountain. And it was a painting of different species of plants and flowers painted on this yellow wall. And so it was the first quote-unquote real-looking wall painting that I ever did. And this was also a success. The difference between this one and the previous one is that this time I was working outdoors, so I was dealing with a lot of rain because it was the rainy season, which meant I had to time the short periods of time when I could paint to just those moments when there wasn't any rain, because otherwise it would wash the acrylic paints from the walls before it would dry, and this would create a mess on the perfectly clean yellow background behind. And so I had to paint this one much quicker than I would have loved to. And so after about 10 days of painting, maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, depending on what time it was raining, I finally finished the job. It rained heavily after I was done, and the paint was never damaged or destroyed. So this was the first time I actually got the affirmation that acrylic paints can actually work perfectly in any kind of weather. The next painting came the following year, 2022, and this was actually a painting that was meant to be a replacement to the first wall painting I'd finished 4 years before in 2018. So it was really nice to see that not only had the first painting lasted so long, because it was the first time I saw it after I'd finished it in 2018, but the clients were so happy with what I did that they called me back 4 years later to create another painting for them. And so this was also in the same office block, and much like the first one, this time it was also a vector painting. A vector painting is a kind of painting whereby the borders between different colors are very crisp and clear. And a raster painting is something that looks more realistic. So you can see like the way the light is hitting my face right now, there's no clear border between light and shadow on my face. It kind of flows very seamlessly. A painting that looks like this would be called a raster painting, but a painting that looks like what's on the screen right now is called a vector painting, because the borders are very clear. And so this was to be a painting of an imaginary market scene. And so working with Bill, better known as Kenyan Library, I put together this scene, then painted it in the same way as I did the lions before. And even though I would have loved to record this process, I couldn't because I was painting it in an actual construction site. In other words, while I was painting it, the inside of the office block itself was being constructed. So there was a lot of dust and noise, and it was impossible to record anything. And every night of painting actually had to start with an hour of cleaning up all the dust from the previous day or night of construction work. And so that then became my third mural or wall painting. And the fourth wall painting, which is the main part of the video, came in 2023. And my job here was to create or kind of stimulate an underwater scene in this underground sort of bar room. It was the most monumental job I've ever gotten in terms of scale and size, but the theme itself wasn't that challenging because underwater scenes are things I've painted quite a number of times before, and I'm also pretty good at editing and creating scenes that don't exist thanks to my background as a design student. And so after a couple of weeks of coming up with the whole scene of how I'm going to paint each and every wall of this room, I was able to get down to work. And this time I was able to record a bit of it. I couldn't record all of it because it was so physically demanding that after the first night of recording, I had to put the camera aside and just take pictures from then onwards, just so I could focus on finishing this job because the walls were so huge. And sometimes it would seem overwhelming just to look at the scale of the work that was still left. In any case, painting this entire scene took a month. And so the concept behind this painting was that it's supposed to make you feel like when you're in this room, you are underwater in a ship that somehow has glass walls. So it allows you to see outside, and you can see fish swimming outside the walls and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool concept, a very demanding one as well physically. So a lot of these jobs actually require some level of physical fitness, otherwise it will be hell trying to create some of these paintings. And needless to say, it was really satisfying to know that I'd been able to turn this room that when I first walked into it had nothing but white walls all around it into something that looked a bit more active and had this kind of cool feeling to it. And it also helps that right outside this room there was an actual swimming pool, so that feeling of a watery scene looks a bit more believable than it otherwise would. The kind of unfortunate thing for people who would like to see these paintings, which is something of a common request I normally get when I post them, is that all these are located in private residences or offices where you can't just walk in to look at a painting, and so the only way I can show them to you is through a video like this. I hope this does justice to it though, and you're able to appreciate the scale of the work and also the details when I'm able to capture them, because that's what I enjoy most about my style of painting. At the time of creating this video in 2024, the other wall painting I've done is the one I talked about in the previous video. The painting is called The Runners, and this time I was able to record the entire process. So if you'd like to watch how exactly I go about making these kinds of paintings, then you can watch that video as well using the link in the description. I'll now show you progress pictures of how I painted different walls in this room, and finally a video of the complete work. So I hope you enjoyed the experience, and till next time, thanks for watching. So this was the first time I actually got the affirmation that acrylic paints can actually work perfectly in any kind of weather. Acrylic paints can actually work perfectly in any kind of weather. The next painting came the following year, 2022, and this was actually a painting that was meant to be a replacement to the first wall painting I finished 4 years before in 2020.